This message comes from Mattress Firm. Summer is the time to reset your sleep. Mattress Firm's sleep experts will match you with the right mattress because there's no one-size-fits-all. Get matched at Mattress Firm's 4th of July sale and sleep at night.
What's good? You're listening to Code Switch, the show about race and identity from NPR. I'm Gene Demby.
And I'm B.A. Parker. Now, Gene, have you ever seen the movie Medicine for Melancholy?
Have I ever seen Medicine for... I love Medicine for Melancholy. What? I loved that movie when it came out.
Listen, okay, I loved it too.
Okay.
But, like a lot of people haven't seen it.
Mm-hmm. Okay, Parker, actually, before we go any further, you got to explain for the many people who have not seen it, what Medicine for Melancholy is.
Yeah, okay. So it's a little indie movie from 2008.
Mm-hmm.
It cost about $15,000 to make. And it was the first feature from Barry Jenkins, who would go on to direct and win an Oscar for the movie Moonlight.
Yep.
And it's about two people who spend a weekend awkwardly getting to know each other after they hook up at a party.
Despite the fact that one of them is in a relationship.
Is he white?
Does it matter?
Yes and no.
Well, what if I told you he is white and we met in a volunteer program in Bayview? Would that matter?
Yes and no.
Oh, okay. I see you. You're one of those people.
Those people?
Yes, those people that think that Black History Month is in February because it's the shortest month in the year.
It is.
And this couple, they're not really a couple. They just happen to be Black.
It's kind of like Before Sunset, with the languid banter, the filling each other out. Except, these two already got it in.
Full mumblecore, man.
It's very mumblecore.
Hey there, one-night stand neighbor. Want to go to the land of make-believe with me and King Friday and all the magical critters and creatures?
I'm going to take a shower. So weird.
One of the big dynamics in the movie is that they both hang out a lot in social spaces that are mostly white or gentrifying. And they have some, we'll say, ambivalence about those spaces.
Mm-hmm. And they seem to have chemistry, but that could just be them, sharing some cultural touch points that they don't really get to engage with in the white spaces that they hang out in. But
Right.
Whether or not these two characters, Joe and Micah, are actually a good fit for each other, that's an open question, even to the end of the movie. Yeah, I love this movie. I love this movie so much. They got so much right about the randomness and slipperiness of making connections in a big city. Anyway, wait. Why are we talking about this movie from 2008 today? Parker, what's going on?
Well, I've been thinking about it because it changed how I approached art.
Uh-huh. Do say more.
So when I was a super young film student, Barry Jenkins, then unknown, came and presented this film to us in school.
Wow, that's dope.
It's really cool. And Medicine for Melancholy just broadened how I was able to articulate ideas about representation and expression and tenderness. And it offered me language on how to exist and connect with other Black folk, especially in mostly white spaces like film school. And I've talked about this conundrum before on Code Switch, where whether it's going to a punk show or learning how to play the banjo, I'm often searching for the niche within the niche that can feel like home. And, and hoping there is another person of color in that corner of the world looking for me too.
Huh. I mean, Parker, you're a film nerd, a whole film professor. I just assumed that you would have name-checked, Kurosawa. You know what I mean? I'm surprised that Medicine for Melancholy was that movie for you. I'm not mad. I loved it, but that's really surprising.
I mean, we can talk about your himbo if you want to.
No.
But I mean, okay, yes, it's not the most high art, political, serious movie out there, but sorry to get cheesy, Gene. It really moved me.
That is allowed.
And that's what we're getting into today, Gene. There's so much stuff that wasn't necessarily the best movie or book or album or whatever that we've experienced. but it's the stuff that shaped us and how we look at the world in really important ways.
Huh.
So in these dog days of summer, and with, the world on fire, we're going to get a little lighter and hear from our teammates at Code Switch about the stuff that blew their minds and made them, the overthinking race and culture nerds we know and love today.
I'm so amped for this. Let's do it.
So today we're hearing from our teammates and a couple play cousins about the books and movies and music that shaped how they think about race and identity as young people. The stuff that made them destined to work on a podcast like Code Switch. Starting with our producer extraordinaire, Jess Kung.
Hi, this is Jess Kung, one of Code Switch's producers. And in a Northern California elementary school during the W. Bush years, a teacher read this YA historical fiction novel aloud to my class, Esperanza Rising by Pam Munoz Ryan. It became one of my first favorite books. I think it was a major stepping stone for my understanding of race, class, immigration, many things. It tells the story of Esperanza, the sheltered only daughter of a wealthy landowner in post-revolution Mexico. In 1930, the day before her 13th birthday, her father is murdered, and soon she finds herself fleeing with her family's servants to California. The book follows Esperanza's first year living in a migrant farm workers camp, adjusting to her new life as a racialized laborer.
Esperanza, you must scrub them like this. Isabel walked over, took the diapers, and plunged them into the water up to her elbows. The water quickly became murky. She rubbed the diapers with soap, vigorously scrubbed them back and forth on the washboard, and wrung them out. Esperanza was amazed. She had never washed anything in her life, and Isabel, who was only 8 years old, made it look so easy. Puzzled, Isabel looked at Esperanza. Don't you know how to wash clothes? Well, Hortensia took everything out to the laundry quarters, and the servants, they always... She looked at Isabel and shook her head no. Isabel's eyes got bigger and she looked worried. Esperanza, when I go to school next week, you'll be here alone with the babies, and we'll have to do the laundry.
It's a bit of melodrama, a bit of fairy tale. It's pretty didactic. It does the thing where Spanish is written in italics and immediately translated. But I think as a US-born kid who didn't know how to feel when I was treated like a foreigner, those aspects were all useful and engaging to me. I mean, I was probably 8 or 9 years old reading this over and over again. The details of the story sparked my curiosity about the real histories, segregated pools, Japanese shop owners, farm worker labor organizing. The book is actually based on the author's grandmother, Esperanza Ortega, and at the end, she tells that real-life story in brief and adds even more historical context, like how the book is set during the Mexican repatriation of the 1930s. That was during the Great Depression, when the U.S. quote-unquote voluntarily repatriated, removed, deported, as many as 1.8 million people to Mexico, at least half of them U.S. citizens, in order to try and protect white people's jobs. It's crazy right now. In the book, immigration enforcement is used to break a strike. Esperanza and her people have crossed the picket line. They aren't convinced that striking is worth the income loss, especially because Esperanza is paying for her mother's hospital bills. They think they'd just be discarded, replaced by white Oklahomans. Esperanza is packing asparagus when the striking workers get unilaterally rounded up by immigration authorities, and she finds herself increasingly understanding of the strikers. Here's the scene.
Esperanza tried to go to sleep, but the day spun in her mind. She was glad she had kept working and thankful that her camp had voted not to strike, but she knew that under different circumstances, it could have been her on that bus. And then, what would Mama have done? Her thoughts jumped back and forth. Some of those people did not deserve their fate today. How is it that the United States could send people to Mexico who had never even lived there?
I think what kept me rereading Esperanza Rising as a kid was how empathetically life under injustice and indignity is rendered. It tells a story where people make hard choices to care for each other, in which their problems stem from systems, not villains. I mean, it's very much for young readers, but I think despite any high-level adult political critiques, it's still really touching, and I cried rereading it. So there.
Once again, that was Jess Kung, and their pick was the YA novel Esperanza Rising by Pam Munoz Ryan.
Up next, we got Sequoia Carrillo. Sequoia is a reporter on NPR's education desk, but you've probably heard her on Code Switch a few times before. Here's Sequoia.
And the first thing that I thought of that influenced my thinking on race was something not overtly related to race at all, actually. But that was kind of the point. This movie signified a distinct shift in how I thought about myself and the world and what was possible for a diverse cast to showcase on the big screen. More than just pain or struggle, but joy and healing and unabashed ambition, no matter where you came from. That movie is, of course, Sister Act 2, Back in the Habit.
Your teacher says take off your robes. Take off your robes. Do it quickly, come on. I don't know, just take off your robes.
Put on anything you want. If we're gonna go out there, we're gonna go out there comfortable. Some of us.
When I tell you I know every beat of this movie, I'm not kidding. My sister and I used to watch it upwards of 10 times a year and perform all the choreography, full out, to the final number, in our living room. For the uninitiated, Sister Act 2 takes place in San Francisco in a failing Catholic school that is about to close unless they come up with funding. Whoopi Goldberg swoops in, pretends to be a nun again, and I can't explain the first movie here, but you probably know it. And she turns the kids into a choir who, spoiler alert, end up winning the all-state choir competition and saving the school with the prize money. It also has a hugely diverse ensemble cast that felt completely natural and made my dad, my sister, myself, all feel like we saw ourselves on screen, even though, to my knowledge, there was not one Native American in it. But there is a guy in the final number who looks like a mashup of my two brothers, right down to his striped hoodie, which was pretty cool to watch. I couldn't tell you when this movie came to me. It came out a few years before I was born, and I don't remember a time when I didn't know it, but it kind of holds up. The kids are up against a lot. They're aware of who they are and how the world views them, and they talk about it. And that helped me learn to do the same in my life. I wasn't afraid to take up space in any landscape, even when I would be perceived in all sorts of ways.
Once again, that was education reporter Sequoia Carrillo recommending a little-known indie movie by the name of Sister Act 2.
Okay, up next we're going to hear from another one of our very dope producers here on the Code Switch team, Xavier Lopez.
When I was in college, I watched the movie Persepolis for a film class. It came out in 2007, and it's based on the graphic novel of the same title by Marjane Satrapi. The film is an animated autobiographical story about Marjane's life and coming of age during the Iranian Revolution. It starts off with her as a kid, discovering punk rock, ABBA, and Iron Maiden, while growing up in an ever more repressive Iran.
Here I was, living a sheltered, frivolous existence, while my family and friends were steeped in the nightmare of war. The more I tried to rid myself of the guilt with distractions, the worse I felt. I wanted nothing more than to live the life of a normal teenager.
It then moves on to her life as a young adult in Paris. Iran gets more dangerous as the revolution continues, and Marjane's parents decide it's best for her to get an education in France. There, Marjane tries to fit in while coming to terms with all of her identities in this new place that already had preconceived notions of who she was.
Tell me, where are you from, Marie-Jeanne, right?
Uh-huh. I'm French, from Paris.
Oh, that's weird. I didn't think... I was just in Paris last summer.
Sorry, I have to go see my friends.
As an immigrant to the United States, figuring out all of that myself, I could really relate.
So, now you're French, are you? I had no idea.
Please, Grandma, don't start.
What? I'm just asking you a question. I didn't know you were French, that's all.
Do you think it's easy being Iranian here? When I say where I'm from, they treat me like a savage. They think we're all crazy fanatics who spend their time killing each other.
And you think that's a good reason to deny where you're from?
This movie completely broke through my perceptions of what growing up in a country like Iran would be like. It widened my view of the world. It's not like I didn't know about some of what was happening in that region of the world, or that I didn't know Muslim folks growing up in Queens. But the film brought me into Satrapi's living room in such an intimate way that I had not ever experienced before, in a way that broke through a lot of those previously held beliefs of what people, but especially women from Iran were like, how there were revolutions and private rebellions happening everywhere, from large ones that cost lives to small ones like blasting punk in your room. Growing up in a post-9/11 New York, Muslim identity was so often scapegoated or caricatured. And people from Iran and other Muslim countries were described in such one-dimensional ways in most of the media I was exposed to. It was a very alienating view of so many people, when in fact I seemed to have a lot in common with them. So this movie was a much-needed history lesson and helped contextualize some of the wars that I was growing up around. Also, a lot of the coming-of-age aspects, such as the rebelling against your family, getting into romantic situations with people that you maybe shouldn't, it just hit a little extra hard as a young college kid who was also struggling with my own late teens, early 20s messiness.
Once again, that was Xavier Lopez recommending the film Persepolis, based on the graphic novel by the same name by Marjane Satrapi. Yeah, I don't know about you, but I feel like this is definitely going to expand my reading and listening list now.
Me too. I'm so excited.
And there's even more to get into when we come back, including one of your picks, Gene.
I was having this back and forth with that album that was happening in my head because I loved it and I felt protective about it and I wouldn't shut up about it. And I also deeply disagreed with it.
That's coming up. Stay with us.
Support for this podcast and the following message come from Indeed. You just realized your business needed to hire someone yesterday. Indeed's Sponsored Jobs helps you stand out. According to Indeed data, sponsored jobs posted directly on Indeed have 45% more applications than non-sponsored jobs. Speed up your hiring right now with Indeed and get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/codeswitch. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring? Indeed is all you need. This message comes from Whole Foods Market. Beat the heat and save at Whole Foods Market. Ice cream and frozen desserts are on sale for 50% off with Prime on brands like Jenny's, Good Pop, So Delicious, and more. Scoop some now, pack your freezer for later. And check out summertime sweets from the experts in the Whole Foods Market Bakery, like their sweet and fluffy angel food cake and limited time peach, Mary, and berry pie. Summer is sweeter at Whole Foods Market. Shop in-store and online now. This message comes from Revenued. Revenued offers fast, flexible funding for businesses, up to $250,000 for the highest revenue category, with approvals in as little as one business day. Funds are made available on demand, and the cost of capital is based on a fixed factor rate applied to the amount you draw. There are no application fees, no draw fees, and no maintenance fees. Apply now at getrevenued.com and be ready for whatever comes next. Support for NPR and the following message come from USPS. With USPS Ground Advantage service, it's like your shipment has a direct line to you. It leaves the dock, you know about it. It's on the road, you know. And when it reaches your customer, you guessed it, you're still in the know. Here's the real game changer. It's one journey, one partner, total peace of mind. Check out USPS Ground Advantage service at USPS.com/in-the-know. Because if you know, you know.
Parker.
Gene.
Code Switch.
We've been hearing from our teammates about the books and movies that really shape how we all came to think about identity and culture and race. And up next, we got more of those recs, starting with our managing editor, Dalia Mortada. She came across a book in college that challenged the way she showed up in the world.
I spent a lot of stages of my growing up years uncovering different layers of what it means to be Syrian from a family that has spent a couple of generations in the diaspora. First in different parts of the Arabic-speaking world, then in Europe, and finally in the US. As a young kid, it was feeling different for speaking a different language and practicing a different religion from most of my classmates. In high school, it was all about anxiety and assimilation in a post-9/11 world. And in college, I dug into what it meant to be from a part of the world that was both exoticized and belittled by the US. That's when I came across Cities of Salt by Abdurrahman Munif. It's a beautifully written, winding historical fiction novel set in the 1930s in an unnamed kingdom in the Arabian Gulf. The book tells the story of what the discovery of oil did to a small oasis village and the people who lived there. I was struck by the book's scathing criticism of American exploitation of the region's oil and the cultural confrontation between Americans and locals, but also by the fact that the critique was multi-directional. The book also went after local elites and political leaders in this Gulf kingdom for the way that they handled the discovery. And the book came to me at a time when I was coming to terms with the fact that when it comes to the dysfunction in parts of the Middle East, of course, Western imperialism has its part, but so does the opportunism of local leaders. Cities of Salt also played with that sticky area of what it means to be admired for your so-called exoticism while at the same time being judged or belittled for being savage or backwards. I'd spent a lot of my coming-of-age years taking the benefits of that dynamic for granted while ignoring the cons, and reading Cities of Salt forced me to take a long, hard look at how that was not a winning strategy in the long run. The book has helped shape the critical lens through which I analyze the racial and ethnic and political power dynamics that shape so much of the way our world works.
That was Dalia Mortada, Code Switch's managing editor. The book that shaped her was Cities of Salt by Abdulrahman Munif. Up next, Code Switch senior editor Leah Donnella.
One thing to know about my upbringing is that I was raised by two lawyers who were also total race nerds. So growing up, our house was filled with a lot of very thick, intense-looking tomes with titles like Affirmative Action and the Law, or Segregation, School Choice, and the Supreme Court. Those aren't the real titles, but they're pretty close. Anyway, one of those books always stood out from the rest because it had this bright yellow cover. And, big surprise, it was called Yellow, Race in America Beyond Black and White. And it was by a lawyer named Frank H. Wu. One summer day when I was about 13 and couldn't find anything better to do, I finally cracked it open. And to my immense surprise, I was entranced. The book was part cultural critique and part memoir, and the author's descriptions of growing up in a peaceful, largely white suburb of Detroit felt weirdly similar to my own in suburban Pennsylvania. At one point, Wu describes the masks that he was made to wear during his lifetime as an Asian American man.
I could be a laborer laying railroad tracks across the continent with long hair and a queue to be pulled by pranksters. A gardener trimming the shrubs while secretly planting a bomb. A saboteur before the day of infamy at Pearl Harbor, signaling the Imperial fleet. A kamikaze pilot donning his headband somberly, screaming "Banzai" on my way to my death. A peasant with a broad-brimmed straw hat and a rice paddy on the other side of the world, stooped over to toil in the water. An obedient servant in the parlor, a houseboy too dignified for my own good. A washerman in the basement laundry, removing stains using an ancient secret.
Despite the fact that Wu and I came from different places, had different races and genders, and were of different generations, I feel like I really recognized that idea of shuffling between these caricatures that have been laid out for you to embody. But the thing that influenced me the most about Yellow was actually Wu's legal analysis. Not that I would have admitted that to my parents at the time. In the book, he goes through more than a century of political and legal history that has shaped what it means to be Asian American, like the story of Wen-Ho Lee, a Taiwanese-American nuclear scientist who was prosecuted by the U.S. government for being a spy for China. Only he wasn't.
From literally hundreds of leads, the spy hunters focus on a single suspect, Lee, because, as the name of their investigation insinuated, they surmised that if the Chinese military had sought an inside source, they would have found an ethnic Chinese. By their racial reasoning, Lee was a natural suspect.
And Wu broadens out the stakes of this and other cases to talk about the repercussions that the racial profiling of people of Asian descent has for all Americans, especially other people of color.
Regardless of the racial aspects of the Lee case, it shows the Kafkaesque power of an unrestrained prosecution. Whatever Lee's race, it should give pause to all of us that the investigators had identified him as a suspect and then found a crime with which to charge him. The inquiry as to whether he had committed a crime on the one hand, and the inquiry as to whether he was able to preserve his civil rights and whether he was given due process on the other hand, are different inquiries. But the former must be subordinate to the latter.
Reading Yellow, I felt like I understood in a new way that the stakes of being raced in this country go beyond stereotypes and interpersonal interactions. That in fact, the very idea of who gets to be considered a full citizen and even a full human has been an ongoing legal debate for generations, and one that has had consequences for everything from where people get to live and work, to who has access to education, to who you can befriend and love. And I think Wu also makes a really effective and important case for why interracial solidarity matters so much. Yellow is a book that definitely feels like the time period in which it was published, the start of the new millennium, the onset of the internet era. But even today, I feel like so many of the books I read about race, identity, and especially what it means to be of Asian descent are in conversation with Yellow. I think of Kathy Park Hong's Minor Feelings or J. Caspian Kang's The Loneliest Americans. The way Frank H. Wu thinks and writes through the nuances of his identity and the cultural, political, and historical factors that have shaped him really felt like they were template setting, at least for me.
All right, Jean, we've heard from everyone else now. What about you? What was the piece of art that shaped little Jean as a kid bopping around Philly?
Okay, so y'all got to go back with me to the dark ages before the internet in the early 1990s. So I was in middle school, and it was the morning that my grandmother died. She was the hub around whom our whole family revolved, and she would call my mom every morning, first thing. But that one morning, she did not. And after we found out that she had died, my sister and I, for some reason, decided to go to school anyway, because I guess what else are you going to do? And on the SEPTA bus, on the way in, my favorite cassette, the first hip-hop album I ever loved, Midnight Marauders by A Tribe Called Quest. It finally popped in my little off-brand Walkman. So by the time I got to school, I was in shambles. And shout out to Mr. Datola, who was my teacher, who saw me kind of falling to pieces and somehow like MacGyvered the cassette tape back with Scotch tape and some scissors. And it worked sort of like it was warped and it would be all distorted if you played certain songs, but it worked. I could still listen to it. Wherever you are, Mr. D, you're a real one. That album that almost gave up the ghost the same day that my grandmother died was the first album that I ever like really wanted of my own volition that wasn't just like ambient sound, right? My mom got it for me for Christmas, and she was real skeptical on account of the big parental advisory label on the cover. And it really wasn't that explicit, but I was obsessed with it.
Listen up, everybody, the bottom line. I'm a black intellect, but I'm refined. Precision like the bullet, target bound.
I would come home and write down all the lyrics to the songs in my little, black and white composition book. I mean, to the extent that I could even understand, like, their weird New York slang. They had these thick Queens accents, and they used those, like, rounded R's that sound like W's. But I thought if I could just decipher their rhymes, I might unlock some hidden knowledge that might make me cool, And so every single day I would do this. And hip-hop back then was, like, meant to be a little more high context, a little more impenetrable, like all these illusions, all this like super local terminology. Anyway, I was rewinding it and stopping it and rewinding it and stopping it and trying to get all the words in. Maybe that's why the tape eventually popped, because I just ran it into the ground trying to transcribe it. It took me forever to put together that the first line in the song Midnight, for example, is about being harassed by the cops, because where I was from, we didn't call the cops Jake.
Jake be getting early when the sun get dark. He be coming out the heads, but you don't let me stop.
Tribe was cool to me, like incredibly cool to me, in this way that I was not. But they were cool in a way that I might be able to be, if that makes sense. And I felt like I was having this back and forth with that album that was happening in my head, because I loved it and I felt protective about it and I wouldn't shut up about it. And I also deeply disagreed with it. I don't know how else to explain it. Like, it was an album that was joyful and jazzy and fun, and it was in conversation with, things like the AIDS crisis and gun violence and misogyny. And I was a tween who had no coherent politics. So the whole thing kind of had me messed up. Like, on some level, I was looking for some template for how to be a black man and how to be cool. And the lane that Tribe offered up to me to do those things was both legible, but also maybe warranted interrogation. And it helped that, like, as sonically cohesive as this album is, it sounds like Tribe is working through their own stuff too. Like, okay, there's a song on the album in which Q-Tip is thinking through his own relationship with the N-word over this incredible beat that samples the jazz trumpeter Freddie Hubbard's song Red Clay. And Tip is kind of like all over the place with it. Like, he lays out the history of the word as a slur. He makes a case for reappropriating it. He's rolling his eyes at the old heads who don't love that young black folks use it. But he says he also tries not to say it himself. My feelings about the different points of view in that song, like, would literally change depending on the day I was listening to it or the context I was hearing the song, which I guess is kind of like that word itself when you think about it. And on some level, I think I just started to digest all kinds of hip-hop, and I guess later, all kinds of black pop cultural production that I loved in that way, with a kind of fondness, but also a raised eyebrow. Like, the fondness demanded the raised eyebrow. Even now, my friends will be like, well, damn, Gene, you really hated Album X or Movie Y. And I'm like, what you mean? I love Album X or Movie Y. And I really don't mean to be a hater, but Tribe nurtured in me this expectation that fandom meant, like, wanting the stuff you love to be dope and smart, but also chewy and frustrating all at the same time.
Make you smile like a little bitty child. Everybody got their something. Everybody got their something.
And so, as Nika Costa once said, everybody got their something. And we want to hear from you about your something. Like, what pieces of pop culture, whether it's a book, an essay, an album, a comic book storyline, shaped you? Tell us, and we might even share your story. And thanks for listening to ours. And that is our show. You can follow us on Instagram at NPR Code Switch. If email is more your thing, ours is codeswitch@npr.org. And subscribe to the podcast on the NPR app or, wherever it is you get your podcast. You can also subscribe to the Code Switch newsletter by going to npr.org/Code Switch newsletter.
And just a reminder that signing up for Code Switch Plus is a great way to support our show and public media. And you'll get to listen to every episode sponsor-free. So please go find out more at plus.npr.org/Code Switch. This episode was produced by Courtney Stein and Jess Kung. It was edited by Leah Dinella. Our engineer was Kwesi Lee. And a big thanks to Angel Carreras and Sequoia Carrillo for their work on this episode.
And we would be remiss if we did not shout out the rest of the Code Switch Massive. That's Christina Kala, Xavier Lopez, Jess Kung, Dahlia Mortada, and Vernon Williams. As for me, I'm Gene Demby.
I'm B.A. Parker.
Be easy, y'all.
Hydrate.
Support for NPR and the following message come from Rosetta Stone, the perfect app to achieve your language learning goals no matter how busy your schedule gets. It's designed to maximize study time with immersive 10-minute lessons and audio practice for your commute. Plus, tailor your learning plan for specific objectives like travel. Get Rosetta Stone's lifetime membership for 50% off and unlimited access to 25 language courses. Learn more at rosettastone.com/NPR. This message comes from Mint Mobile. Mint Mobile took what's wrong with wireless and made it right. They offer premium wireless plans for less, and all plans include high-speed data, unlimited talk and text, and nationwide coverage. See for yourself at mintmobile.com/switch. This message comes from Warby Parker. Prescription eyewear that's expertly crafted and unexpectedly affordable. Glasses designed in-house from premium materials starting at just $95, including prescription lenses. Stop by a Warby Parker store near you.